I am the writer of the textbooks of Scientology.
You have no idea how much money Scientology is going to cost you. You're also not being told you're being hypnotized.
L Ron Hubbard basically talks to Dianeticists and auditors on how they can audit out the game.
I'm doubtful about the temperament of your flamingo.
Hello and welcome back to part 3. In this video we are moving down the iceberg into shallow water. In this video we'll talk about some of the courses that get people into Scientology. We'll also talk about the auditing, and I go back into the church to find out more. But first, to really understand Scientology, we have to get into the mind of its creator, L Ron Hubbard. To Scientologists, he is a prophet, delivering mankind all of the answers to life's problems. I have to say, when researching about his life, I found it quite nauseating, but here we go. L Ron Hubbard was born in 1911 in Tilden, Nebraska. His mother was a teacher and his father a US Navy officer. For a short while he lived with his grandparents whilst he studied, but he was failing in school and was dropped from enrolment. He would attempt to join the Navy, but failed the examination. Instead, he was sent to the Woodward School for Boys in Washington, D.C. He successfully graduated from the school in June 1930 and entered the university the following September to study engineering. He would later lie and say he was a nuclear physicist, doctor, scientist, but he failed physics and he didn't even graduate from the university. He didn't graduate because he dropped out in his second year and he decided he would go to sea and try to find artifacts for museums. He did not find any. After all this, his father volunteered him for a Red Cross relief effort, but L Ron didn't want to do charity. On October 23rd, 1932, he travelled to Puerto Rico to accompany a mineral surveyor to find gold. This did not make him rich, so in 1932 he started his career as a writer, specifically doing pulp fiction works for which he would be paid a penny a word. If you're wondering why it was called pulp fiction, by the way, it's because the actual books were made of like a degraded type of paper, the paper pulp, and that's where it gets the name from. Just a fun little fact. L Ron Hubbard published over 1,000 books, and he is actually the Guinness World Record holder for the number of books published by a single author. But before he started Scientology, L Ron Hubbard would become an officer in the Navy. His military service is a major part of his persona within the church. They talk of L Ron Hubbard as a war hero.
He was a master mariner, licensed to captain vessels on any ocean, and a United States naval officer who commanded corvettes during World War II. He is L Ron Hubbard.
He claims to have been blinded and wounded to the point of permanent disability during the war, but his Navy records show that he just had pink eye and arthritis, and he was never even injured in battle. This is important information because he would claim in his book Dianetics that he actually cured himself of all of these illnesses, and he did this using the technology of Dianetics.
Dianetics by L Ron Hubbard. Buy your copy at B. Dalton's, Walden Books, or wherever paperbacks are sold. A fresh look at today's problems.
This was the penultimate book that would lead him to start an entire religion, Scientology. But here's the thing, if he didn't actually heal himself, like it says in his Dianetics book, then the religion, just like his injuries, is fictional. Hubbard also claimed during a dental procedure whilst on nitrous oxide, or laughing gas, he said he died for 8 minutes. During this death he experienced the world's philosophies and visions, and he learned of the real eternal truths. He would use these visions to write a book called Excalibur, which is what the story would be based on later in Scientology. According to L Ron Hubbard, some of the readers at publishing houses that had read this manuscript had gone insane, so he locked the book up in a bank vault and it was never officially published. In 1945, after a short stint in the army, L Ron Hubbard became associated with Jack Parsons, a rocket scientist and head of the Pasadena Lodge of Alistar Crowley's Ordo Templi Orientis. If you don't know who Alistar Crowley is, he was a Satanist, cultist that lived by the rule, do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law. Or basically, do whatever you want. One of the major features and core teachings of the Alistar Crowley organisation is its practice of sex magic. Basically, the idea is that some kind of goddess can take part in a special ritual, and in this ritual, she would give birth to the Antichrist, and they would be able to control the child's power to have power over all men and women. L Ron Hubbard was known to his associates in the 1940s as a talented hypnotist. During this period, he worked in Hollywood posing as a swami. A swami is a term used in Hinduism for a master or prince providing spiritual counsel. The church says that Hubbard's experience with hypnosis led him to create Dianetics as an alternative means to solve man's problems. So he basically uses hypnosis to make you remember your problems as not problems. Now, there's not that many examples of auditing, but the YouTuber who goes by the name Reckless Ben actually managed to sneak into the Church of Scientology with a camera and filmed his first auditing session. It's a wonderful example of how the process works. You will recount a story over and over and over again for up to 10 hours.
Okay.
We go through whatever we have to go through and I get to the end. Close your eyes. Begin at the beginning and tell me what you see.
I got brainwashed. They put memories in my brain.
What?
I had to recite lines for 10 hours.
The idea is that they null the negative feelings about this experience through repetition. This is done with gradual changes to the story until you actually remember it differently. This is the same technique they use to get you to remember past lives, and it can also be used to coerce false confessions. Let's talk about the wives of L Ron, shall we? L Ron Hubbard was not a single man, no. He actually had 3 wives and 7 children. The first wife was Margaret Louise Polly Grubb. He abandoned her and their child for 2 years and met and married Sarah Hollister. This was Jack Parsons' girlfriend from the sex magic cult. His paranoia would lead him to contact the FBI, claiming that she was a Russian spy. After Sarah filed for divorce, L Ron Hubbard kidnapped their baby Alexis and took her to Cuba. Here's what happened.
He called me and told me that he had killed her. He said he had cut her into little pieces and dropped the pieces in a river, and it was my fault. Then he'd call me back and say that she was still alive. And this went on and on and on. When I left him, he cleaned out all the joint bank accounts so that I wouldn't have any money.
When Alexis was older, she actually tried to make contact with her famous dad, and he sent a messenger around to read a letter to her that said her mother was a whore and that she wasn't his child. L Ron Hubbard even wrote her out of the will because her mother would not give up custody of her. Probably a good thing, or else she probably would have ended up in the Sea Org. In 1951, Sarah Hollister actually consulted psychiatrist who actually recommended he was committed to a mental hospital. During his first divorce, Hubbard was diagnosed as schizophrenic. His physician suggested to him that he should get psychotherapy. On October 15, 1947, L Ron Hubbard sent a letter and begged the United States Veterans Administration to get him psychiatric help. Another interesting thing about Sarah Hollister is that there are photos of her and L Ron Hubbard together, but these photos have actually been photoshopped to remove Sarah from them because L Ron Hubbard states that he only had 2 wives, when he in fact had 3. Why did he lie? We'll never know. But what is clear is that they wanted to erase her from the history. And most Scientologists do not know about her. L Ron Hubbard had a total of 7 children, 4 of them estranged, which is a legal divorce from your child, and to this day only Diane remains in the Sea Org. Quentin, his eldest son with Mary Sue, tragically committed suicide. L Ron Hubbard was on the run from the FBI. The UK even banned him. He was charged for petty theft and fraud in France. He was fined 35,000 francs and sentenced to 4 years in prison, which went unserved as he fled to sea. We will cover some of the government infiltrations he carried out a little bit later on in the iceberg. At age 74, L Ron Hubbard died of a stroke in 1986. David Miscavige assumed power of the group and told the Scientologists that he had discarded his body to continue his research.
He has now moved on to his next level of OT research. This level is beyond anything any one of us ever imagined. This level is in fact done in an exterior state, meaning that it is done completely exterior from the body. At this level of OT, the body is nothing more than an impediment and encumbrance to any further gain as an OT. Thus, at 2000 hours Friday, the 24th of January, AD 36, L Ron Hubbard discarded the body he had used in this lifetime for 74 years, 10 months, and 11 days.
The Scientologists do not know the true nature of his death. They also have 6 houses around the world for L Ron Hubbard for when he returns. Apparently, members of the Sea Organization still go into these mansions and lay out his clothes just in case he comes back. There was also an incident where L Ron Hubbard may have actually tried to commit suicide. He asked Steve Fouth to increase the electricity output of an e-meter for him to try and get rid of his stubborn thetans. He also said he wanted it to kill the body. It's strange to me that a man who was so against electroshock therapy eventually made his own version of it. Now, Steve did not want to kill him, but he did fulfill his request. His e-meter did blow up, so it's assumed that he did try to use it to attempt suicide, but we'll never know for sure. L Ron Hubbard had reportedly said that the only way to make any real money was to start a religion. He also said that the only way to control people was to lie to them, and if you want to enslave a nation, then promise them total freedom. And so, Dianetics was born. Dianetics, the modern science of mental health. It was the first self-help book of its kind, and it remained top of the New York bestseller list for 10 weeks in a row. The basic idea of Dianetics is you have 2 parts of the mind: the analytical mind, the perfect computer, and the reactive mind, which records all of your negative experiences. These experiences are called engrams. You can get an engram from a bad experience and even from not understanding a word properly. And this is why you've got problems like depression or eye trouble or arthritis. The engrams. It actually claims that a number of health problems can be uniformly cured by using Dianetics. Well, as always, I wanted to find out some more, so I went into the church yet again to ask some questions about Dianetics. Once again, I have disguised the voices so the staff members cannot be identified. I don't want them to receive any punishment from talking to us because they don't know. They're just doing their job, you know. Anyway, they explained to us all about Dianetics and engrams.
Let's imagine your mind is like an onion, right? And in the center is the core of some engram. So let's say you get angry at something small, right? And an hour goes by and you're like, why did I get angry at something so small like that? And really, it's come probably something like 15 years ago or 10 years ago. All those memories are connected with emotions and with energy. So the point of Dianetics isn't to get rid of all emotions. Yeah. It's just concentrating on irrational emotions. Where are you living? In the present?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure. They even say that Dianetics can be used to manipulate people.
Because of how Dianetics can be used, it can be used very wrongly. It can be used very easily for manipulation. Some people are very good, and some people are very bad. With Dianetics, most people who do it have a massive trauma in their life. We said 100% of the world has trauma.
From being born?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I don't think I'd want to remember my own birth.
No.
Would you?
No. Thank goodness we don't.
But a lot of people have.
Really?
Yeah.
You say you remembered it?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. You remembered your own birth?
Yeah.
I've done probably like over 100 hours of Dianetics sort of thing.
Really?
Yeah. I'm volunteered for the Scientology Church. We're like one of the very few religions that has their founder recorded.
How long have you been here for then?
Yeah, so I was here when I was 16. I first started doing Scientology when I was about 10.
Are your parents are in it, or?
Yeah, so my mum got into it and then my dad followed afterwards.
Is your like, whole family in and everything?
No, just my mum, my dad, my brother, my sister as well.
I did also want to ask them about their stance on homophobia.
You guys don't think that like gay people are like ill or have it? There's no like conversion or anything?
Not at all. That's something which we so disregard. Yeah. It's like we couldn't care less. Yeah. We're here to help you. So whether you are gay, black, whatever it is, it couldn't make a single difference to us. Yeah. We basically just look at what you want to improve.
In Dianetics, it describes people who are gay as perverted and physically quite ill. This is what it says. The sexual pervert, and by this term Dianetics to be brief, includes any and all forms of deviation in dynamic 2, i.e. sexuality, such as homosexuality, lesbianism, sexual sadism, etc. And this person is actually quite ill physically. He is very far from culpable for his condition, but he's also far from normal and extremely dangerous to society. Hubbard further defined perversion in his 1951 book, Science of Survival, Prediction of Human Behavior, where he introduced the concept of the tone scale. The tone scale classifies individuals and human behavior on a chart running from 40, the most beneficial, to -40, the least beneficial. Sexual perversion, a category in which he included homosexuality, was coined covert hostility and given a score of 1.1 on the tone scale.
The most dangerous tone level of all is covert hostility.
Well, I signed up for some fashion design classes.
Really?
Here is the person who smiles to your face and then stabs you in the back.
The idea of the tone scale is that if you can figure out where someone is on the tone scale, you can communicate with them and bring them up a tone higher. So for a 1.1, covert hostility, to bring them up on the tone scale, you could make them feel pain, anger, resentment. In L Ron Hubbard's Handbook for Pre-Clears, he implies that you can audit the gay out of somebody. Claire Headley, a former executive of the church, said auditing is seen as a cure, the idea being that if you move up the tone scale then you won't be gay anymore. Some of the auditing questions include:
L Ron Hubbard basically talks to Dianeticists and auditors on how they can audit out the gay. Scan every time you resented somebody's sexual conversation. Scan every time you try to hide something about sex. Scan every time you called up an old sexual experience for your amusement. Scan every failure concerning sex. Scan every time you obeyed a sexual partner about anything. Scan all the time you started sex and failed. Okay, so those were some of the weird auditing procedures that you would use in order to cure yourself of homosexuality, which is not possible to do.
The unofficial spokesperson for queer Scientology, Keith Relkin, died February 3rd, 2012. He was required to sign a document at the LA Org saying he would refrain from committing homosexual acts whilst in the church before he could receive any Scientology auditing. He reported being punished for having gay thoughts and for going out to a gay bar one night. Keith Relkin tried to bring Scientology to the LGBTQ community, and he was met with disgust from the church, with them saying, "Why are you helping gay people?" Other ex-members have also spoken out and said that they were ridiculed and punished for their sexual orientation. After we had had the talk about Dianetics and homosexuality, we had already lost a lot of brain cells, but we decided to do the free personality test. We were taken downstairs into a room that reminded me of a 1960s horror school. The test took 45 minutes and we answered 200 questions. This is called the Oxford Capacity Analysis, and I should mention it has no relation to Oxford University. It's only used within Scientology. Psychologists have criticised the test's lack of scientific basis. Other critics call it intentionally manipulative and humiliating. The aim of this test is to find your ruin, so they can figure out what course to sell you. Some of the questions on this test include: would you buy on credit with the hope that you can keep up the payments? Do children irritate you? Do people enjoy being in your company? Are you suspicious of people who ask to borrow money from you? Would it take definite effort on your part to consider the subject of suicide? And my favourite, would you use corporal punishment of a child aged 10 if it refused to obey you? The way it works is anything above this line is good, here is average, and below the line, this requires urgent attention. I was told that my personality was lukewarm. Good communicator though. I was asked where I was from, what my job was, if I had a relationship, and if there were any painful traumatic memories I had. Anyway, after I told him my childhood trauma, he then proceeded to try and sell me a course for £67. I told him I would think about it. Meanwhile, Megan was getting an absolute grilling upstairs. I have to think they were playing some kind of good cop, bad cop situation here. Megan has allowed me to play you part of this conversation to show you what her results were like.
I'll go over this with you.
Okay.
Oh, you have an interesting graph actually.
Do I?
So,
Very jagged.
very jagged. Some highs, some lows.
I'm seeing a lot of below average moments.
Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, right, these tests, they're pretty brutal. They're pretty, I guess, almost like invasive in some ways, but on purpose. So this section is like the lower sections, the stuff you need to work on.
Okay.
So it just shows you your attention can get split off into different directions very easily, or you can sometimes lack concentration or focus. Do you ever struggle with that?
Yes.
Okay. Different thoughts, some real, some not so real.
What do you mean, like real or not so real?
Well, like, some of them like worries. This is your level of happiness.
Okay.
So it just shows that you can get down or have negative thoughts. What is it that you're already pretty aware of that you're trying to work on about yourself? It shows on the graph, but what's the depression, anxiety stuff like now?
Better.
This is the anxiety.
Hey.
That's the lowest point.
Yeah.
Have you ever had panic attacks?
Yes.
We're sort of very different to conventional mental health or psychiatry in terms of labeling things. Like, they would look at this as sort of like the bipolar thing, or like going up and down basically. Here, same with your level of productivity. You can be super productive and motivated, and then other times you can find it really hard to get yourself going and motivate yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Aggressive is like your tenacity, your ability to keep going and not. It's not aggressive in the sense you're going to punch someone's lights out.
Oh, okay.
Although I don't know if you've got that in you. Then this bit is interesting. Okay, I'm going to ask you like an odd personal question, right? Okay. Get into a situation where you're unfaithful or promiscuous, even though it's against your morals. I know it's a personal question, but what is a thing you've done like that you don't feel so good about?
I'm a vegan and sometimes I eat eggs. It is quite a personal question.
Sometimes those little things accumulate, and the person can, as a result of that, withhold themselves in some way, and it can actually end up contributing to feeling depressed. Yeah. So that's that. This is like your level of communication. Shows you're quite outgoing, communicative, you've got good communication level, lack of accords like empathy. It shows like sometimes you get into situations where you can't quite see the other person's point of view. You might come across more cold than you actually are or feel. But yeah, that's your graph. Out of all this stuff we're discussing, what's the most important for you to deal with or improve? Are there any particular experiences that you've gone through that you know were like shaping in a way?
I was bullied quite a lot when I was a child.
You were like, pick me up, I'm a victim for bullying.
Not on purpose.
In my opinion, these tests determine your potential as a Scientologist. They ask many questions about money, and they try and find out what things bother you. These tests are about as backed by science as a BuzzFeed quiz that tells you what breed you are. If you want to take their test, then go ahead, but just be aware that the true nature of these tests is to find your ruin and to get you to buy a course, or a book, or a DVD, or a seminar, or a lecture. In both mine and Megan's case, they wanted to find out what bad things had happened to us. Let's talk about the symbols. Scientology has a few symbols that represent what they believe, and I thought in this part of the video, we would just explain them a little bit. They do use a cross like Christianity, which is on the top of their churches. Now, apparently this is to represent the 8 dynamics. Dynamics are the 8 different areas of your life. Whenever Scientologists have to make hard life decisions, one's about disconnection, or taking a loan out, or remortgaging your house, they are asked to consider what will benefit the most number of dynamics. The catch is that anything that benefits Scientology benefits all the dynamics. Yes, the greater good.
Calling yourself a community that cares.
Oh, but we do care, Nicholas. It's all about the greater good.
The greater good. How can this be for the greater good? The greater good.
If we just look at their main symbol, I don't know if it's an accident that it's basically the cross of Christianity with an X through it. And we already know L Ron Hubbard believed that Jesus was an implant put there by the aliens. This one is seen quite a lot too, which represents OT, or operating Phaeton. And the other symbol we see is this one. The S stands for Scientology, but if I were designing the logo, I'd probably do it like this. The bottom triangle is the ARC triangle, affinity, reality, and communication. The top triangle is the KRC triangle, knowledge, responsibility, and control. Now, I know there are a lot of words used in Scientology that are not used in the English language. And Scientology also take a lot of words that do exist in the English language and change and twist the meaning of them. So, in this little next section, it's going to be a short segment to teach you how to speak Scientologese. Here we go.
Cycle. Intergulate. Dramatization. Engram. E-meter electropsychometer. Ethics. Floodless. Hat. Mest. Withhold. Overt. Perceptic. Postulate. Restimulation. Reasonable. Theta, good vibes. En theta, bad vibes. Body thetan. Raw meat. What?
Now you're assimilated and absorbed, you're ready to become a Scientologist. We are going to start looking through the levels of the Bridge to Total Freedom for free. Each level has a mandatory donation that you have to pay. Mandatory donation, is that an oxymoron? I'm pretty sure it is. If you can't pay then they might even ring up another Scientologist, ask them to buy your course, and then you'll owe them money. Sometimes they do this without even asking the other person. They'll just take their credit card, buy the course for you, and you'll pay them back. But as long as you're okay with all of that, you are ready to start. If you are about to join Scientology, you might have already done one or more of their life improvement courses. These are probably the most useful and practical courses in the entire religion, and is designed that way to get you in. The first official course we are going to look at is the Purification Rundown at $2,500. Lots of religions have a form of purification before you join. It's a symbol of initiation into the religion, like baptism, where you can be partially or fully immersed in water as an official joining ceremony. Scientology have the Purification Rundown, which you have to do before you can start any of the other courses on the Bridge to Total Freedom. The idea is that you have loads of toxins and drugs stored in the fat cells of your body. Having these toxins will stop you being able to progress spiritually. There is no scientific evidence to back any of this up, by the way, but let's carry on. They say to get rid of the drugs and toxins from food, alcohol, recreational drugs, and cleaning products, you need to sweat them out in a sauna. It'll be 5 hours a day for up to 5 weeks. Staying in a sauna for a long time can cause heat exhaustion and even heat stroke. People on the program will be told that they may experience drug trips and hallucinations. There is no medical support in case of an emergency, but you will have a twin or a buddy who is doing the program with you. You will be required to drink vegetable oil and take high doses of vitamins, including up to 5,000 milligrams of niacin or B3. The daily recommended amount is around 12 milligrams. and it can be found in foods like vegetables. But it's considered a good thing if you can achieve a niacin flush. This is what happens when you overdose on niacin. Your skin becomes hot, red, and itchy. But L Ron Hubbard says that this is just radiation. Other side effects include severe skin flushing combined with dizziness, rapid heartbeat, itching, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and gout. Science says that you can't actually sweat out toxins, and recreational drugs do not stay in the body forever. It also doesn't matter how old you are. Children as young as 14 have completed the Purification Rundown. When I went to the church to ask about the Purification Rundown, I spoke to someone who has done it twice. This is what they said.
The first time I did it, I didn't quite get the end result, so I had to redo it.
How long did you do it for then?
The first one is 21 days. The second one was 56 days, but it's usually, that's very long. Like, so you can sit in the sun and you get this sunburn mark from a holiday went on 3 years ago. Suddenly, around on your body, the radiation is sweating out.
What? Oh my God. So how long do you spend in the sauna then every day?
Up to 5 hours. Yeah. Really?
That talk about the sunburn from the 3 years ago absolutely killed me. Why make anyone go through this Purification Rundown? Well, my conspiracy theory, allegedly, is that it's a incredibly difficult initiation, a rite of passage into the church. Anything after the Purification Rundown could seem easy, fun even. Staring contest? Easy. Interrogation? Bring it on. Being fatigued could make someone more suggestible and more easily manipulated, therefore they might be more willing to carry on with the training. Or else, what did you put yourself through all that for? You are conditioned from day one to believe that torture is good for you. I only think this because of what's about to come next after the Purification Rundown. The training routines. So, now we are officially going to start to go up the bridge. For free. And that's a great price. We are going to go through what happens and then you can decide for yourself if you want to pay for your spiritual freedom. After you've spent your first $2,500 on the Purification Rundown, you'll be spending another $1,840 on the training routines. You are now what a Scientologists call a pre-clear. Congratulations. The training routines, or TRs, are a set of 9 processes that increase in intensity on a gradient. A process is a Scientology word for thought conditioning. The end effect of these exercises is to neutralize the students' critical thinking and make them more suggestible as they engage in further training or auditing. They condition Scientologists in how to communicate with one another, and you will often hear about them having their TRs in. It also makes it difficult for them to communicate with people outside of the organisation, which further strengthens the us versus them mentality. As I mentioned in part 1, I have done these training routines and they are mind-numbing. The first routine is called OTTR0. You sit on a chair opposite another, the coach, with your eyes closed. This initiates sensory deprivation, stress, and disassociation. It also gets the person into a trance-like state. The next one is TR0, Confronting. In this exercise, you are required to stare at your partner without movement, excessive blinking, or looking away. You have to be able to do this for at least 2 hours without flunking, or else you'll have to start again. This is one of the most important training routines in Scientology. It puts people into a receptive state. Some people have even reported hallucinating. There is intense pressure not to flunk, but you will. For small movements, disengagements, this causes uncertainty and frustration. This exercise is the reason Scientologists have a fixed, intense stare that looks through you when they speak to you. They have it absolutely drilled into them that that is how they should communicate, and they'll find it quite difficult to communicate with anyone who doesn't have their TRs in. TR0, Bullbaiting. In this exercise, you are required to sit with your eyes open for hours whilst the coach tries to get you to react. They will look for your buttons, things that could cause offence or personal insults. This is particularly harmful because you are being conditioned to accept attacks. For men, these attacks would often revolve around sexual perversion, and for women, it's usually about critiquing their body or their faithfulness to their partners. They would also try and bring up memories of things that you might have done wrong. This can continue for hours. If you resist, you are told, don't analyze, just accept the data. Basically, suspend your disbelief while we program you. Hubbard's objective for bullbaiting is not about being able to confront. It's about unquestioning acceptance of information. I know you guys liked the clips of the Scientologists getting mad in the street last time, and I got more for you. But it's a great example of how they actually use bullbaiting in a real life situation. It's particularly good when they're attacking critics. Check it out.
If you can't control your eating habits, Mark, what about your sexual habits? Where do they run to? Small children? Huh? Animals?
When's the last time you saw your daughter, Patty?
I see her on a very regular basis.
Oh,
Let me talk! It's my turn! It's my turn!
What is it, small barnyard animals? What does it for you? Little boys?
You're a nice person, aren't you?
I don't beat my staff.
You're nice, aren't you? But you beat your wife, don't you?
Why do you attack Scientology?
Because of the criminal activities of your organization?
Good point. Criminal activities. What are your criminal activities, Mark? Because that's why you're here. You've got your own criminal activities you want to hide. Let's spit them out, Mark. That's all you're here for, to hide your own crimes.
Nazi criminal, go back to Germany! Nazi criminal, go back to Germany!
You're not welcome! This lady is a criminal! Freedom of religion! Hi! We like freedom of religion!
Yeses. Yeah, what would they be? Oh, I'm sure you're a child molester myself. He looks like it to me. That'd be my guess.
Anybody else want to talk to me?
You're committing suppressive acts.
Am I, Brian? What is that then exactly?
The next one is called TR1, Dear Alice. In this one, basically, students read lines out of Alice in Wonderland completely out of context. They have to get the words across without embarrassment and without reading it, so they have to commit the line to memory and say it.
I'm doubtful about the temperament of your flamingo.
This is where the gradient starts to come in. Now that you've been able to accept insults, you're going to be trained to accept and speak absolute nonsense. Out of context sentences from Alice in Wonderland are read out loud by the student, and they are to deliver them without thought or feeling, like a robot. The sentences are nonsensical and induce confusion and suspend familiar reality. There is actually a CIA technique called the Alice in Wonderland technique. The idea of it is to obliterate the familiar and replace it with the weird. It's done by normalizing lunatic behaviors and states of madness portrayed as sane. Illogical, unrelated statements and questions will eventually torture the person as they try to make sense of the situation. This breaks them down and may make them more likely to make admissions in an attempt to stop the nonsensical babble. Now, I'm not saying these two things are definitely connected, but I think they do condition the thought process of a Scientologist to believe the nonsensical words and writings of L Ron Hubbard as fact. In the real world, you would question anything that didn't make sense. Scientologists may never question the tech. The tech is flawless. If it's not working, then it's because you've done something wrong. TR2, Acknowledgements. Coach reads Alice in Wonderland dialogue and the student must acknowledge what the coach says by saying, okay, good, thank you, alright, or fine.
Alright. When I'm a duchess, I won't have any pepper in my kitchen at all.
Flunk, you were fidgeting while you were giving me the command. Start.
When I'm a duchess, I won't have any pepper in my kitchen at all.
Good.
The repetitive nature of the acknowledgements can be hypnotic. The point of this training is to get the student to agree to any statement. Acknowledging nonsense is not a required thing in the real world. As we go up the bridge to total freedom, you'll see that stranger and stranger ideas are introduced. Scientologists believe and accept the story because they have been trained to. If you're wondering why I'm not saying his name, it's because I don't want any of you to get pneumonia before you're ready for the information. So it's for you, okay? It's all for you. TR 2.5. Again, you read lines from Alice in Wonderland and the students must respond with half acknowledgements like and uh-huh. This teaches that an acknowledgement can be used to control someone's communication. This is basically a technique to get you to continue talking. When you're in an auditing session, they need to keep you talking as long as possible. If you feel like you are being heard, you are more likely to continue talking. L Ron Hubbard says, if you acknowledge a pre-clear well, you will have the pre-clear under much better control. TR4.
Do birds fly?
Your glasses are crooked.
I'll repeat the auditing command. Do birds fly?
Your shirt is dirty. Okay, flunk. I distracted you. Start.
Partner will ask you repetitive questions such as, do birds fly and do fish swim? You have to try not to answer. Your partner repeats the questions by saying, I will repeat the auditing command. This is continued until you learn that questions will be asked until you answer them. You then have to try and physically leave the session, and your partner must restrain you and get you back in the chair and repeat the same question until it's answered. The drill is passed when the auditor can always get his questions answered. This is basically training for the auditor and training for you. You learn that you must answer the question, that the question will be asked over and over again until you give the correct answer. You also learn that you'll be forcibly restrained if you try and leave the session. And they'll repeat the questions again. Do birds fly? Do they? This is supposed to teach you that these kinds of requests to stop the session is just the reactive mind and should be absolutely ignored. If you don't ignore them, then you'll never be able to reach clear. This allows the auditor to ask you invasive questions and you are not able to protest. You will be told that you might feel some strange things in an auditing session. Rather than being viewed as warning signs that are being controlled in session, the student is told if they can overcome these feelings and continue, then they can really progress spiritually. TR4 is basically an exercise in overriding someone's better judgment. TR 5, 6 and 7 are about controlling the body. The student will be asked to control the coach by telling them to go to the wall, look at the wall, turn around. This training routine trains them to give control of their body to the auditor. This was created because students could wish to leave or blow an auditing session. Commands like sit in that chair and thank you, can we continue are drilled into you to make sure you continue on with the session, no matter how uncomfortable you are. These auditing sessions can be 12 hours long, so auditors need to control you so that you stay and talk. TR8, tone 40 on objects.
Okay, start.
Stand up! Thank you! Sit down in that chair! Thank you!
This is probably one of the most ridiculous ones, to be honest. This is where you shout at an ashtray. You do this until you have a realization. Usually takes about an hour to have a realization. And if you're wondering what realization, well, after an hour of shouting at an ashtray, I'm pretty sure you'll come up with one. And the last training routine is TR9. This is tone 40, but with bull baiting. This exercise is more for auditors than for pre-clears. You'll verbally bull bait with tone 40, shouting at your auditor and telling them that you want to leave. The auditor is required to physically stop you and get you to stay. You will learn that counter intention will be stopped. You're not allowed to leave a session without severe consequences. If the training routines have worked, then it actually never occurs to you that you can just leave the session, or even leave Scientology. And after completing all this, you've got to write your first success story.
I'm supercharged. Like someone hooked me up to a battery. Me, training is everything. It is non-negotiable. It is something that I use every single day, and it makes life easier.
And you'll have to write success stories for all of the courses you complete. You will have to stand up in front of your group and tell them what you have learned, why it's useful, and how it can be used. If you cannot come up with anything, then you will fail and you have spent your time, money and dignity for nothing. After this stressful experience, you are love bombed by the group. Everyone robotically congratulates you on your big win, and this is a sign of acceptance into the group. These are your friends now. Well done. You are now a Scientologist. Next, you will be completing the Happiness Rundown and the ARC Straight Wire. On this course, you will learn that you can't get any worse. These courses will further reinforce your training routines and teach you how to respond during the auditing sessions. Then you can start your grades so you can become clear. This is a state where you have gotten rid of your reactive mind. I will simplify what happens on each grade because there are literally hundreds of questions and processes on each grade. So I'll simplify it down because we'll be here all day. Grade 0. This is about communication. By the end, you'll be able to communicate with anyone on any subject. You do this with auditing by recalling times where people have communicated with you and when they haven't communicated with you. Grade 1. On this grade, you will be able to recognize the source of problems and make them vanish. You do this with auditing. You talk about your problems, identify a source, and go over it repeatedly until you have a realization that you can make your problems disappear. Grade 2. You will feel relief from the hostilities and sufferings of life. You do this by confessing bad things you have done in an auditing session. This is done until you say that you feel relief from all the guilt of your past actions and you don't feel like you have to keep any secrets anymore. Grade 3. You will achieve freedom from past upsets and have the ability to face the future. You do this with, you guessed it, more auditing questions. You finish when you say you feel free from past upsets and can face the future. Grade 4. Grade 4 deals with thinking processes used when accusing someone or making others wrong, as it's referred to in Scientology. Questions on this grade include, in this lifetime, what do you use to make others wrong? So you might say something like, oh, I use aggression to make others wrong. And then for each answer given to that question, the following are asked. In this lifetime, how would being aggressive make you right? In this lifetime, how would being aggressive make others wrong? In this lifetime, how would being aggressive help you escape domination? In this lifetime, how would being aggressive help you dominate others? In this lifetime, how would being aggressive aid your survival? In this lifetime, how would being aggressive hinder the survival of others? And then you will do that all over again with a different thing you use to make others wrong. And then all of the questions are asked again. And you'll do this over and over and over again, and you'll probably have about 25 hours worth of training on each of these grades. Let's talk about the E-meter. This is a tool used in your auditing sessions. Its full title is the electropsychometer. It's a religious artifact that measures your thoughts and can even help you find thousands of aliens that are all over your body. But you won't find out about those for a while. For now, it's used in your auditing sessions where you talk about past experiences. And it's also used for security checks to make sure that you're not having any doubts about Scientology. You will also be required to buy one as you go up the bridge, and this will cost you about $6,500. $6,500. You can get a Mac, like a full-on computer, for cheaper than that. That is mental. During the series of questioning you are about to go under, it is likely that the needle will move and you will need to address it. Auditing can be very stressful, and it's your responsibility to come up with the information to satisfy the auditor. Past experiences, past lives will all be covered and recorded. Everything you say is written down and video recorded without your knowledge. In my experience, it's more like an interrogation, but examples of questions you will be asked include the following. Have you ever been a professional critic? Have you ever made a planet... What? Have you ever made a planet or nation radioactive? Have you ever made love to a dead body? Have you ever eaten a human body? Have you ever exterminated a species? Have you ever been a professional executioner? Have you ever failed to rescue your leader? Did you come to Earth for evil purposes? Have you ever deserted or betrayed a great leader? Have you ever smothered a baby? Do you deserve to have any friends? Do you deserve to be enslaved? Is there any question on this list I'd better not ask you again? Bloody hell, all of them. Awful. If the needle moves when any of these questions are asked, they will say, "Oh, your needle's risen, something's there," and you'll have to explain it. Now, you're gonna need about 150 hours of auditing to go clear, and it's only gonna cost you $120,000. And there may be some additional services you need to pay for, like security checks. See, now that you're a Scientologist, you've got to report on anybody who is critical about Scientology. That could be doubts, jokes, questions. You will write a knowledge report on any other Scientologists you see breaking the rules, and oh yes, they will write one on you as well. To avoid having a knowledge report written about you, the best thing to do would be not to discuss any problems you're having in Scientology, and then you'll probably be okay. Going clear. This is the ideal state of mind that Scientologists aim to reach. Someone who is clear, never gets sick, has a perfect memory, and has a high IQ. What's so shocking to me is that so many Scientologists have no idea what they did or said in their sessions to go clear. This is top secret class 5 auditor information. But apparently, all you have to do to go clear is to say the following phrase.
I just realized I've been making my own reactive mind all along. And now I'm not doing it anymore. I'm clear.
This phrase is called the clear cognition. And it's just crazy to me because all this time you spent dealing with the reactive mind, you get to clear and then you go, oh yeah, I made it all up. Once you get there, you can also buy yourself a fancy bracelet that costs between $500 and $700. Back in the 50s, L Ron Hubbard held an event featuring the first clear. Members from the audience were encouraged to test her perfect memory. She could not even remember the colour of the tie that he was wearing. In my opinion, all clear really means, to me anyway, is that you're clear of all your own thoughts. And you can't even feel sadness for bad experiences that you've had. So long compassion, so long empathy. Sounds like brainwashing to me. Well, I'm going to leave you at clear. That's it for part 3. If you have been following the series so far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the support. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'll see you in part 4 where we'll be continuing to go up the bridge and looking at some of the darker practices that happen within Scientology. That's all from me for part 3 and I'll see you in the next one.